Hey everybody, my name is Smitha, and I'm the current chair of the San Mateo County Tobacco Education Coalition. I wanted to bring you some information while you're sheltering in place about smoking, secondhand smoke, and how it might impact you. So let's dive right in. Here is what we know. We know smoke travels across walls, so you might actually be exposed to secondhand smoke coming from a nearby apartment while you're sheltering in place. We hope you'll watch through this full video to find out how this affects you. But first, a little bit about the Tobacco Education Coalition. We're a collaborative of community members and organizations working to make communities healthier, whether that's preventing young people from starting to smoke or passing policies to protect community health. So, what do you know about secondhand smoke? You might know that secondhand smoke is the excess tobacco smoke from another person's cigar, cigarette, or hookah. You might have also heard of secondhand aerosol, which is different than secondhand smoke. And secondhand aerosol is just the excess mist or spray coming from another person's vape or e-cigarette. And we'll talk more about that. And last but not least, third-hand smoke is the dust and the particles that are left behind after the gases evaporate from smoke. So even if you ventilate a room, there might be dust or residue left behind that people are still breathing and taking in. No matter how you use tobacco, whether that's in a cigar, cigarette, vape, chewing or smokeless tobacco, or a hookah, tobacco products all contain nicotine, which is highly addictive. Nicotine gives the user feelings of pleasure at first, but over time, users begin to crave it just to feel normal. So when it's smoked, tobacco can cause cancer, heart disease and stroke, diabetes, COPD, and asthma. And tobacco can also be used in a vape or e-cigarette. The vapes deliver nicotine and other flavorings not via smoke, but via an inhaled aerosol, like hairspray. Yes, that hairspray. The flavorings in vapes contain a chemical called diacetyl, which causes popcorn lung. And popcorn lung is the scarring of the air sacs in our lungs, making it difficult for air to pass through and for us to breathe. Since 2014, vapes have been the most commonly used tobacco product among US youth. So, what do they look like? They can look a variety of different ways. They might look very sleek and compact. They might be more obvious. They may be disguised as common household objects. For instance, a Juul might look like a USB or a flash drive, but as you can see from the Swarin vapes on the right, they can also be disguised as pencils and similar school supplies, or the droplets, the flavoring droplets that go in water. Now, what's in a vape? We know that one pack of cigarettes contains 20 milligrams of inhaled nicotine, and a Juul pod contains a similar amount, 20 cigarettes worth of nicotine in a single pod. If you are looking at other vapes like Fix and Sorin, they might have an even higher nicotine by volume. More than 4 in 5 adults oppose e-cigarette use in indoor public places. But for many, apartments are like indoor public places because of how the smoke can travel across walls. And we know that more than 1 in 3 US adults living in apartments report exposure to smoke inside their apartment. So that brings us to multi-unit housing. What is multi-unit housing? Well, it's just anything with shared walls. So that's apartments, condos, townhomes, duplexes, or triplexes. And we know that anything with those shared walls will also share air vents and possibly even hallways and other common areas where the smoke can travel. It can travel through doorways, cracks in walls, electrical lines, ventilation systems, and even plumbing. And opening windows and fans does not completely remove secondhand smoke, as we know that third-hand smoke, the particles, can be still remaining in the environment even after a room has been ventilated. Secondhand smoke affects everyone, but there are some populations that are especially impacted by secondhand smoke in their apartments. Young people, people with disabilities, and older adults might be more physiologically vulnerable to some of the harms of secondhand smoke. But we also know that some groups are more impacted by secondhand smoke because they may have less ability to move out of their unit if they are facing secondhand smoke, or they may have a fear of retaliation or may face discrimination if they report it to their landlords. So people of color, low-income residents, and immigrants may also be vulnerable to secondhand smoke in their apartments. So let's hone in on young people. We know that the adolescent brain develops all the way until age 25, and using nicotine before 25 can actually solidify the pathways for addiction into adulthood, like footprints in wet concrete. That means that using nicotine before the age of 25 might make it more likely for a young person to be addicted to nicotine, but also more likely for them to be addicted to nicotine and other substances into adulthood. Just wanted to highlight some of the connections between smoking and vaping and coronavirus. This graphic is from the Santa Cruz County Tobacco Education Coalition, and I think it kind of highlights some of the connections. So we know that smoking and vaping can damage the lungs and they can harm the immune system. And so even if someone's level of exposure to coronavirus is the same as the next person's, if they have been smoking or vaping, they're more likely to catch coronavirus upon exposure because their lungs are damaged and because their immune system has been impacted. So if someone in your apartment or a neighboring unit is smoking or vaping while sheltering in place, they may be putting young people, older adults, immunocompromised people, people with an autoimmune disease, and people with asthma, COPD, and other lung issues at a higher risk of catching coronavirus than they would be otherwise. A little bit about smoke-free multi-unit housing. These policies have been adopted across San Mateo County to protect the health of residents, understanding that smoke does travel across walls, windows, cracks in floors and walls, plumbing, and that the secondhand smoke can actually be really harmful to the health of people living in multi-unit housing. So what can you do? Well, if you live in Menlo Park, we strongly recommend that you take the survey on this slide, bit.ly/MP smoke-free. The Tobacco Education Coalition is currently advocating for a smoke-free multi-unit housing policy in Menlo Park. And your feedback on this potential policy is going to be really helpful to us when we go before the City Council. What else can you do? Well, whether or not you're in a city with a smoke-free multi-unit housing policy, writing a letter or sending an email is a powerful tool to share your experiences with your city council or other decision makers in your community. But if you don't have a policy, we definitely recommend that you talk to your city council about passing a smoke-free multi-unit housing ordinance. And if you're experiencing smoke in your apartment from within your unit or other units, you can call the Tobacco Education Coalition Smoke-Free Hotline to report it. We will contact the smoker for you. So that number is 650-573-3777. Thank you.